Is this working? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I'm excited for our meetup. Just a couple things. We're going to try something new this month where we have like a hack room. Got some comments and feedback about like sometimes the topics were over your head or maybe a little beneath you, one or the other. The topic tonight is kind of an intermediate to advanced topic, so if you feel like this might not be appropriate for you, or if you just want to check out the hack room, it's going to be upstairs on the 3rd floor. I got a couple guys that are going to be up there running it. You can just have discussions, ask questions, maybe show off some stuff that you're working on. Just kind of a little forum for you, whatever you feel like. The floor will be locked. You have to have a key access card to get up to the 3rd floor. So that's kind of maybe the only stipulation. You got to decide now if you want to go. And this guy, Matt Winchester here, will take you up. Other than that, I'm trying to think of what else. I don't know. I don't think I have anything else. Oh, just a shout out to our sponsor, AtTask. Appreciate them putting this on, bringing us food. I work for AtTask. We're looking for senior software engineers, especially for JavaScript. So if you have experience and looking for a new place to work, AtTask is a great place. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. Just introduce Nick Seegmiller. He's a software engineer over at Vivint. They've been using Angular for about a year. And he's going to give a talk tonight about using promises and routes. So I'll turn it over to him.
All right, can you guys hear me fine? All right, so thanks, Matt. So like you said, my name is Nick Seegmiller. I've been a software developer for give or take 10 years. I went to the University of Utah. I got a computer science degree there. My background, I've done e-commerce. I worked for backcountry.com. I worked for a game studio in Salt Lake City, Sensory Sweep Studios. Shortly after that studio ended, the CEO did jail time, so yay for game development. Best and worst job I've ever had at the same time. After that, I worked for Spillman Technologies for 4 years doing public safety software. And now I work for Vivint, like you said. At Vivint, I work in what we call our platform group. Basically, we are building apps that allow you to control your home security system, your home automation system. So with our app, you can arm your system, you can turn on a light switch, all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. So, and as you can probably guess from my description, I've had a lot of experience in lots of different programming languages. I've done professional JavaScript, Java, C#, C, C++, really gone all over the board, and I like to consider myself a jack of lots of trades and a master of exactly none of them. So, been doing, when I started at Vivint last May, the app was just getting off the ground floor in Angular, and it was my first introduction to Angular. So this is a topic I feel like is not covered very well in the literature, and it's both how to use routes and promises together to really get something powerful. And it's all there, but there's not very good examples, which is why I thought it would be valuable. This is also one that we ran into over at Vivint. So if you want to follow along, if you have internet, which you probably don't, but you can get all the code. It's all on my GitHub page, github.com/nseegmiller. And I run through kind of how to do this. Basically, there's 2 pieces to this. I have a dummy server, which I wrote, just a little REST server. It's Node and Express, and it basically just serves up 3 static pages. And then for the front end, we're just using Gulp to build a little live reload server. And the references I'm going to be using at the bottom. So I'll just start and just kind of show you what we're building here. And you'll have to excuse us, that orange is the core Vivint color, and I'm just used to using it everywhere. So you gotta love orange. So this is a basic example of a problem that we had at Vivint. And the basic idea is that you need to make multiple asynchronous requests, and you need to make them in a specific order. So in this case, this is just an arbitrary dashboard. So I'm going to hit this dashboard page. I have to authenticate. So I have to prove to the server that I am who I say I am, and that may be a login method. I may have already logged in, and I'm just passing my session cookie back over. When I log in, it's going to tell me what systems I have access to. And that's probably just going to be like a raw batch of systems. So let's say I have access to these 3 systems over here. From there, I need to figure out and look up information about those systems. So what are their names, any other properties that may be associated with them, the users involved, and things like that. Once I can get all that, then I need to look up all of the devices that this system has. So in this case, I've just made 3 arbitrary sensors that this system might have. So this is a basic page, and I've already built it, and we're going to be kind of live hacking on it. So I can't even resolve localhost. So we're going to be doing live coding, so I've made some offerings to the live coding demo gods, and we will hope for the best. So let's just jump over into PyCharm here, and I'll just show you a little bit of background. So here's the Express server. It's very, very basic. So like I mentioned, all it does is I have 3 routes. I have authenticate, I have systems, and I have devices. And all 3 of these are just returning static data. So my name, a list of systems I have access to, names for those systems, devices for one of those systems. And that's it. So nothing very complicated going on here. So from there, let's jump over to the other side. So as was mentioned, I'm going to assume that you guys have a basic knowledge of Angular. So here's our index. And of course, you know, we've set it all up to be wired into Angular just like you'd expect. We've got an ng view here. I've only got 1 route defined, which I'll show in a minute, but you could potentially have a lot more. We're going to be using resource to do our asynchronous requests, and route, obviously, to do the routing. And these are no longer part of the Angular core, so you have to include them individually. So from there, let's jump over and look at our routes. And as you can see, I have exactly 1. So I've got only 1 route, and you guys have probably seen this. This is pretty familiar if you've ever done any routes at all. This is the very basic example. You specify a controller, and you specify a template. And you can either specify that as a URL, or you can put the HTML right there as a JavaScript string, and it will also go through. Now, one of the things I've added is I've just added a constant to my app. And if you noticed over in my server, all of my requests accept as a query parameter a delay, and I just have a super naive sleep function. And so all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to simulate my server being slow. So that will come into play in a minute here. So from here, we'd hit our dashboard. Our dashboard view is very simple. We have that column, that nav column on the left. We're going to get all of our systems out of the authenticate service. We're going to iterate over all of those systems, and we're going to put them in that left bar. I have one that I've selected as active here, and I will apply a different class to it. So you can see, I don't have any idea why that's not loading. The internet seems really flaky. Oh, and I need internet because it's fetching the Angular scripts remotely. So that might be bad, to put it mildly at best. Yeah. Anybody have a better internet option? Then I'm just not getting anything there. Yeah, if I had them, I could. Yeah, that might. So I'll just continue on while we're doing that. But if you remember down that left bar, I had the systems that I had access to. Over in the right, I just have a block, the name that is associated with that, and then I'm going to list through the devices and build those little device cards. So the way this works, wired up over here. And I'm gonna go through this pretty quick because we're gonna start. I just want to get you an idea of how it works, and then we're gonna start modifying it. If you have questions as we're going, please don't hesitate to stop me. So I've got 3 services, and they do nothing more than interact with those 3 REST endpoints. We've got authenticate, which hits authenticate, and they're all just gets. They're super simple. In a real-world scenario, you'd be posting or more interesting parameters to these. So authenticate is just going to come back and give me my name, the systems I have access to. Devices is going to just give me my list of devices, and I'm just going to populate something right on my service with that in the callback for the resource. Oops. And then in system, we are going to do the same thing. So it's just going to give me all the names. I'm going to populate an array there, and we have all of them. So. Yeah, this won't work on Angular 1. I need at least 1.2. So yeah, so we have, so over here, again, the idea being that we have to call authenticate. When authenticate finishes, we need to call get systems. When get systems finishes, we need to call get devices. And you can see I'm using watch, and I'm just using some parameter that I put on those services to help me know when those things are completed. So this is very naive. Yeah, go ahead.
I turn on the hotspot if you want to try it.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's Angular Meetup. It's showing just 0 through 0 history for everybody if they want to use it.
Please don't, though, so that I can use it and we can demo this.
I don't know if it's going to get better.
Oh, and then there's this.
It's Corp IT2.
Corp IT2. Would it be on right now?
Yeah, that's
There it is. There it is.
We're happy.
That is all you. Unless anyone heard me.
All under this work happy.
Thanks, everyone. All right. So if I can remember where I was talking. Oh, so here. So like I said, this is a super naive way of just making sure that 3 asynchronous services are called in order. So we're going to call the first one, which is login. And then we're going to set a parameter when that finishes, which is login completed. When that goes to true, we're going to call getSystems. GetSystems, when it finishes, is going to call set systems fetch to true. When that completes, it's going to call getDevices. So as you can see, this functionally works fine. Great. Why would we ever want to do anything else, right? Well, let's go over to our API delay, and let's say we want all of these to take a full second. So let's go ahead and reload this. I don't know if any of you know the word janky, but that's janky, right? Fills in my name, fills in the things, and it's a very jarring experience as it fills in one piece at a time. So the first thing that we're going to take advantage of here is promises. So if we look in my service, I'm just using resource with a single success function. In the documentation for resource, we see that that's a perfectly acceptable way of doing it, but this is another one of those that's really awkward. So here's basically the exact example, or a very similar one to what I did. You just pass a simple success function, and it's called when you're done. However, in the documentation, and again, it's so embarrassingly hidden, I wondered how anybody does anything with it, but it says right here. On $promise, which you get back from the get, you can get the promise back. And it's a change in 1.2 that this get actually returns an object that contains a promise. In old versions of Angular, you could get the promise raw. So we're going to use promises to try to make this a little bit better looking, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our login function to actually return a promise. So really all we have to do is this. And we're still going to have our then function. Basically, so promise takes a success callback, and it takes a failure callback. Again, we're just going to pass the success callback to it. Since this is a promise, we actually have to return the promise. So if anything upstream was trying to read that. So the idea of promises, of course, being that they can chain. So if this promise fails, then it will make one farther up the stream also fail. The first person to catch it will fail up the stream. So promise is definitely a little bit more complicated. You could spend an entire lecture talking about just promises. I'm going to just cover the basics enough to get you started. But the basic idea, like I said, is very similar to just a callback function. So I could also handle an error handler. I know for a fact that these will never fail because they don't. But we're going to do the same thing to our other ones here. We're going to make it return a promise. And we will do the same thing. Oh, we have to return the response. And then we'll do the same thing to the system. And it might not be immediately clear why this is important, but it will be shortly. So if we come back to our app, we can see that I've broken it. And this is when we love the web debugger. Okay, I've got my parentheses off. Yeah, doesn't get returns a promise, right?
When you instead return your promise and your function, your success.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This is the joys and the scarinesses of live coding. There you go. So you can see that I misspelled response at least once, but it worked otherwise. Response. There. So close. Yeah. I think that's a feature in the next version of Chrome where it's like, it's good enough. So as you can see, it works the same way. So we've effectively won nothing, potentially, but we have. And so if for nothing else, then we can actually change how we chain these together. So we're going to kill this concept of systems fetched, right? We're just going to pay attention to when these promises resolve. So from all of these, we're going to get rid of this idea of having to worry or care about when these actually return. So we'll just kill that everywhere. And of course, now if we try it, nothing happens. So back in our dashboard, we now need to do these. So of course, authenticate.login is going to return a promise. So what we can do is we can set up another then function for this one, and in that then function, we're going to call getSystems. In that then function, since these are returning promises, we're going to call getDevices. So again, just by virtue of having those return promises, we've been able to make the hierarchy of these a lot clearer and simplify it. If we go over here, it works just like it did before. So just by converting away from a watch, in our very initial version of our app, we weren't even using watches. We were using broadcasts, and we were actually broadcasting via root scope when that was finishing, and we had an on function waiting for that to finish and capturing it that way. This is just much, much, much simpler. However, we still have what I like to call the jank. So this is, so up till this point, just promises. We've already made the app better, but how do we take it to the next level? So this is another one of those things that's documented very, very poorly. So in route provider, we're going to be modifying that. You can pass a resolve to your route. And just to show you how that works, I'm going to just give you a simple example. So in our route, we're just going to have a resolve. Oops. And then we're just going to pass something to it. And this is basically anything given to resolve is injectable in your controller. So we could have something called, status. We'll call it lowercase status. And it'll be, what? Oh, resolve. And this will be some status about something. So what we can do now over in our dashboard is we can actually inject, what did I call it? Status. Okay. We'll go ahead and just make our lives easy and throw it right into scope. Come over to our dashboard, and we'll just spit it out right here. And we can see, theoretically, I've broken it again.
You forgot a trailing comma when you injected status.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't really. I thought I turned on my reload here. Okay, what did I do this time? I don't know. It can't inject that. That's totally a thing, though. Was it? I know that works. I've done it a whole bunch of times. gotta love live programming. So we can inject something right into there via the resolve. So again, like I said, not a very well documented feature. I'm going to take you one farther feature that's even more poorly documented. Right here. This is everything you need to know about what I want you to know about. Right there. If any of these dependencies are promises, the router will wait for them all to be resolved or one to be rejected before the controller is instantiated. So what that means is we can actually call and fetch everything we want before we even change routes. So what does that look like? So what we're going to do here is, and it doesn't matter what we call this, we're going to inject, and it's really cool in that you can inject right into this. I'm so used to using the array syntax on that. We'll just do it this way, but we can inject authenticate, we can inject devices, we can inject system, just right into that. So what we can go do is over from dashboard, we can still all of that code. We can bring it over into our route. We can paste it in. And this is where the magic should happen. Okay. So, were you paying attention? It's because I didn't return the promise. And of course, that showed up. Why? Status. So I could still have status here. I will. And we're not even going to use this one. We're just going to use it as a side effect. And as you can see, everything pops in, everything loads together, and you're done. So this allowed us to make a much cleaner experience in that we have a very complicated UI that's making, it's about 3 that it makes that have to be chained together. And here we can wait until make sure everything's in. And even, I made it exaggerated with a second. Even with 100, 200 milliseconds, it can be enough to just have flashes that occur as you're loading in your app. So, and of course, this is kind of a bad experience because to the user, you don't know that anything's happening. You could pretty easily add a loading spinner icon in this space. I'll leave that as an exercise for you guys. There's a lot of good ways to do that with HTTP interceptors. You can actually watch the resources that are going out and in, and then throw up a loading screen. I can show you guys an example of a place I've done that if you guys want. One of the other things I just want to bring up on this is one of the things that we do in ours is our authenticate function. We have one kind of similar to this that does something like a login, but we have like a keep me signed in option in our application. So if you come back to it, you don't actually have to log in again. It will just do that automatically for you. Well, as we move routes, we want to make sure that any one particular route I might hit, whether it's the dashboard, whether it's looking at a specific page, we run all 3 of these. So every route we have that needs all of this logged in information looks similar to this route here. And I've actually taken this thing here and basically stored it as just a variable, like logged in data. And basically, I just say, no, I actually did like that. That's really dumb. But I'm missing a curly. So, and then I can reuse that for every single page that I want that basically does the exact same thing. Just that simple. So, but the other thing is we actually know after they've hit that first page, that's the only time we actually have to do the authentication. We know as they hit pages after that, that they're already logged in, that everything's fine, and we actually cache their login status, the systems that they have access to. We don't force them to actually round trip the server every time they just bounce around, because Angular is a single page app. Even though we've added routes to it, it's still just moving around inside of a single app. So what you can actually do is behind the scenes in Angular, it uses $Q, which is an implementation for promises of regular Q. And you can actually just create an empty promise, which I love that word, and return that. So basically, you can just create a simple deferred object. You can do deferred.resolve, and then you basically just return resolve.promise. So what we do in our authenticate function here is basically we have some sort of hook before we actually return the resource. We say, if already logged in, and it's more complicated than that, obviously. Then we'll do something else we'll return the actual resource call. So basically then you kind of do the same thing. You inject Q, and then, like I said, you can just say return Q. It's actually deferred Q dot deferred, and then you can return. I swear there's 3 lines to this.
Deferred.resolve.
Yeah. What? Will it? There's a q.when, just like that. Yeah, see? That's even simpler than what I had. And again, the documentation's actually pretty good about this, but that's the basic idea, is that you would just return an empty promise that has been resolved, and that means that I didn't actually need to authenticate again, but it means that this then here will actually fire and it will keep going down the chain. So you can, like I said, at any point along any of these, you can actually cache the results to save yourself some time. So, does anybody have any questions about anything I've covered? I definitely went through that pretty quickly. Either nobody had any idea what I was saying, or I explained it really well. Yeah.
Could you explain the resolve again? So like you have on resolve, you have status and side effects. Like, how does that work exactly?
So, and again, it's just the idea that basically this resolve, let me see if I can show you in the documentation a little bit better. So to this resolve, it's a string and a function. So it's a key, and then it's really a factory. And so you can think about it like that. Any place you can use a factory, you could create a factory otherwise and basically just return it there. I could actually, if these pieces, so let's say this actually returned some body of data, I could actually just return that and then inject that data without even having to include these individually. So I could return something that says all of my data put together as a single factory. I could inject that into my controller, and I could use that. So the basic idea here is that anything past to resolve is available to be injected into your controller. So, and again, these are just 2 simple examples. Here I'm just actively saying I want to pass something into it, and here I'm saying actually, wait for all of these things to resolve. The other way I've used this is also as a pure side effect is to set the title of in the browser. So as I change routes, maybe I want this to change up here. And so what you can do is in your index, since this actually lives outside of any controller in your head there, the only thing you have access to is root scope. But I could set a title here, and then I could come over to my app, and then I could just have, again, some other side effect. I could actually do it right inside of this status. I could inject root scope right into it, and I could say root scope dot title is equal to some title. And if I did that right, it's set to some title. So that's a very simple way that you can do it, and right in your route definitions, set the title for every single route you have, and have unique routes as you migrate around through your app. Is there any other questions? Okay, I'd actually like to show you what we've been working on. We'll see if it loads this time, now that I have internet. Yay. So this is what we've been working on. It's a little bit slow.
It's just ending. I can just tell you.
Okay.
Ending from the Vivint. But, it's just to lock my doors or turn on and off my lights.
This is the basic idea. These kind of experiences are based on devices that people have. So in this case, Nate has a camera, he has a thermostat. He doesn't have any locks, otherwise we'd see a different panel here. If I reload this page, no switches, yeah, you'll notice that everything just loads together. It doesn't pop in those individual experience elements as it loads, and that's, exactly like I said, the problem that I was trying to solve. So, and again, it's amazing what you can do, and notice my routes change, safety, I get that up here, and these animations are baked into the route change as well. So I'm actually changing routes, and that fires the animation based on the routes changing. So there's a lot you can actually do with this, kind of as you move around. So yeah, that's really all I have. But, oh yeah, question in the back.
What is the advantage of using the resolve? I know that you can use HTTP and just return promise with all on HTTP. So what do you get for using that additional pattern?
Yeah. Honestly, you mean over resource?
Yeah, resource.
That's a great question and one I don't necessarily have a great answer to. It's really just a case of convenience. I think HTTP is going to be more powerful because resolve is literally nothing more than a wrapper around HTTP. So if you're familiar with HTTP, use it. Why not? Because it also returns a promise. Yeah.
On those images, it kind of looked like it was reloading them. Was it not sending a 304?
It probably should have been. I'm not sure. I've seen it send the 304 before. Yeah, it's really just a case of the animation's really not playing well right now. Yeah. So there's actually two images here, and that animation's not playing well for some reason, but it's a crisp image and then a blurred image and then it crossfades them. So that it looks like it's blurring out, but it's, I don't know. I'm demoing it so it doesn't look good. So there. Did you see that one? That one looked good. So yeah, that one didn't. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned interceptor and a load screen. If that's a quick demo, I'd love to see it.
Quick is a relative term. I'm actually just going to pull open some code where I've done it, and I'll show it to you. So, at the risk of giving away all of our trade secrets, does this one work, Nate? Yeah, it does. Oh, it's okay. I have my own password to this one. So this is another Angular app we've built that basically is used for internal tools. Log in for Rails. Do I have to be a VPN for this one? Let's see. I could probably run it locally, but this will be a better demo. So you can see that loading screen. So that's the basic idea. Is that it will display some sort of loading indicator as it's doing requests. So the way that's implemented, let me switch over to this. So this is a module you can just go find on the internet. It's called HTTP Auth Interceptor. This is also the thing we use for doing authentication. So if our server, if we ever do an API request and it returns a 401, then basically we've just broadcast a message that says auth's required. We handle that in one of our controllers and we redirect them to the login page. So it allows us to make sure that they can't interact with the server in any conceivable way unless they're logged in. And this actually intercepts those requests. So again, like I said, this is a module you can go literally pull right off GitHub. I have changed it to do the loading icon, and that's what this business is right here. So, and this is literally the simplest possible way you could possibly implement something in this paradigm. But the basic idea is that anytime the interceptor gets any request of any kind, shape, or form, I increment pending requests whenever it gets a response, I decrement pending requests. That's it. So I have a variable in the root scope that says how many pending requests there are. Then over in, I think it's just an index, I have a very, very simple spinning icon that is shown if pending request is greater than 0. So just a really, really, really naive implementation. There's better, maybe simpler ways to do that, but this is an internal only tool. I was really trying to hit the lowest common denominator of helping people realize that something was happening. So. Any other questions? All right, thanks guys.